If you know anything at all about me, then you'll know that next to the love of my absolutely beautiful family and my mild yet healthy obsession with the actress Anna Kendrick, you'll know that the thing I care most about in the entire world is traditional archery. And you may also know, because I wasn't too quiet about it, last year in September, I was lucky enough to go to the south of France, to the Roubaix, with as part of Team GB to represent Great Britain at the World Archery 3D Championships. Now, it didn't go well. It didn't go really, really badly, but it didn't go great. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what happened and why it didn't necessarily go as well as I wanted it to. I mean, archery to me is hugely important. It's a massive part of my life. It always has been, and I'm pretty sure it always will be. I have tried to walk away from archery before, and I can't. I keep coming back to it. And archery to me has never been a sport. It's never been something that I felt the need to perform at or to excel at. It's just something I did. Now I know it is a sport. I mean, it's an Olympic sport. It's this, that, and the other. I mean, I went to a world championship, so it's definitely a sport, but it's not something I've ever considered being competitive at. Now, I'm not a competitive archer, although I am a competitive person. It turns out I'm not a competitive archer. The enjoyment for me comes from being out in the forest with my friends or on my own. It's a solitary and it's a social thing for me. Just being out there, chucking arrows outdoors is the enjoyment for me. I'm the cheap plastic trophies and tin medals. That's not why I'm in it. That's not why I shoot. But yeah, so I found myself in a situation where I had to perform and I had to compete, and it felt strange. It felt very alien to me. And yeah, I made some mistakes, which I now know I probably shouldn't have made. So I want to sort of talk to you about those mistakes as well, and what sort of happened to me emotionally while I was out there. It's going to sound like I'm making excuses, and traditional archers are known for making excuses for why things didn't quite go to plan. But I don't want you to think this is a video of me making excuses. I just want to share with you my experience. But the first issue I had really was with my equipment. Now, there was absolutely nothing wrong with my equipment. I had one of the best bows I'd ever shot, which was my Striker Sport longbow. Beautiful bow, shoots beautifully, suits me so well. But I turned up shooting in a class that was essentially a recurve class. I was up against sort of medium to long, some ILF, some other sort of systems, but sort of high performance target style bows with a traditional twist, we'll call them. So I was the only guy in my category with a longbow. Now, I think I like a longbow. I can shoot a longbow just as well as I can a recurve, but what I'd done prior to the competition, in my head I'm thinking, right, well, the maximum distance I can shoot is going to be 30. So it's not huge distances. I don't need a tremendously quick bow. I'm going to slow my bow down. I'm going to go for some heavy, thick arrows, try and pick up a few line cutters. I'm going to go for stability. I'm going to go for a really rock solid, stable bow. And that's sort of what I went for. But I went for huge 5-inch feathers. It gets really windy on the south coast of France. And yeah, big feathers in wind, it's not a huge advantage at all. In fact, it's terrible. The arrows were dancing all over the place. It was an absolute nightmare. So yeah, a lot of the archers that were there were all going for very speedy, little diameter arrows. And I misstepped. So I think the equipment I'm going to take, if I decide to do it again, I'll probably take something like a Striker fastback recurve, or maybe even my sport takedown recurve, something like that. I'd definitely go for a recurve setup with a much smaller diameter, skinny arrow. Just try and keep up with the big boys. But the other issue I had, well, it's not really an issue as such, but it sort of threw me a little bit. Now, if you know me, you know I'm an instinctive archer. I love shooting instinctively. That's what I love. I love being able to look at a spot and send an arrow down there, and yeah, sometimes you hit it. But I turned up and I was very much in the minority. Even though the class I was shooting in was called instinctive, there were very few instinctive archers there. I was against mostly gap shooters, but not just gap shooters, some of the best gap shooters in the world. Now, gap shooting isn't for me. It's not something I enjoy. My brain doesn't work that way. I think to be a gap shooter, you need a bit more of a mathematical brain, and that's not my forte at all. And I have tried it, and it's not for me. But there's nothing wrong with gap shooting. Some of my best friends are gap shooters, so it's fine. It's cool by me. But yeah, I was up against these gap shooters, and I'll be open and honest and say that a gap shooter generally does make a better tournament archer than an instinctive shooter. Instinctive archers have to have such a level of concentration that it's very difficult to make that concentration last for a whole tournament. And yeah, it's a sad fact of the matter. If I wanted to be a fiercely competitive traditional archer, maybe, you know, years ago I should have come up with a different aiming method, some sort of point of aim method, or gap shooting, or a fixed crawl, or something. But that's not me. That's not what I enjoy. And it's so easy to forget why you pick up the bow in the first place. And I pick up the bow because I enjoy shooting, and I enjoy shooting instinctively. So there was that. Not that it was a huge problem, because I think a decent instinctive shooter can hold his own against a decent gap shooter. Just not all day. But I mean, even Fred Bear said instinctive shooters make terrible tournament shooters. But it doesn't bother me. I'll give it a go. I'll roll my sleeves up and give it a go with the best of them. But yeah, so I was sort of taken aback by that. That there was a lot of gap shooters, and I shoot against gap shooters all the time anyway, so it wasn't a huge thing. Of course, the other thing that was a factor was I just set up Grizzly strings. My company was in its complete infancy. I was working stupid hours trying to get everything off the ground, and yeah, I wasn't practiced enough. I hadn't spent enough time practicing. I neglected my own archery, which didn't help with anything really. I mean, you can't expect to be good at something without putting the work in. And instinctive archery is so much, it's one of those things where if you don't use it, you definitely lose it. And I wasn't using it, but that's been remedied now. I'm sort of shooting a lot more. I'm starting to really enjoy myself again, which is the main thing. But the main problem I had was I had a huge bout of target panic. The worst target panic I've ever had, in the worst possible place to have it. The format of the competition is you shoot 2 arrows per target, scoring either with each arrow either an 11, a 10, an 8. That's all in the kill, or anywhere on the body is a 5. And I blanked my first 2 targets and the first arrow of my 3rd target. So my first 5 arrows of the tournament were misses, and I was devastated. I was sitting at the bottom of the table. I thought, this is it. My biggest fear throughout the whole thing was, what if I turn up to this tournament and I come dead last? What if I turn up and I get my arse absolutely spanked? And this is my biggest fear was coming into fruition, and it was compounding the target panic. And I was a mess. I'm not going to lie. I was an absolute mess. It wasn't pleasant. I had a really couple of nice guys on my target with me that was said, don't worry about it, it's fine. Blah, blah. But no, I felt like a newbie. I felt like I'd never picked up a bow before. I was disgusted with how I carried myself. I normally shoot with such confidence and enjoyment, and I had none of that. I had no confidence. I wasn't enjoying it. And so yeah, my first 5 arrows of the tournament was a mess, and I was trying to remember everything Jeff Kavanagh had told me about target panic, and really desperately trying to really get my shit together. And I came up with my sixth arrow, and I thought, right, it's if I haven't got it by now, it's not coming. I might as well just carry on with the day and not worry about anything. And then I put in a pretty decent shot, put in a nice 10, and instantly I felt a little bit better. I thought, you know what, actually maybe I can do this. But unfortunately, at that level of competition, at that sort of setback at the beginning, there's no coming back from that. It was a world championship. I mean, these are the best guys in the world. I'm not clawing that back. So I sort of settled down and started to enjoy myself and shot okay. I went from dead last up to about 35th, I think, on the first day. It was tough though. There were so many things going on in my head. It was such a bizarre experience, and there was a really weird atmosphere that I'd never experienced before. So I mostly do local shoots. I'm not a tournament archer. So the tournaments I have done, they're usually fairly local and whatnot. Other than this tournament, the biggest one I did was the qualifying to sort of qualify to shoot for Great Britain. That was the biggest one I'd done up until that point. So yeah, it was all a bit of a strange circus. You know, you see in these films, you get the country bumpkin going into the big city and he can't believe quite what he's seeing. That's kind of how I felt. There was all these people from all over the world shooting phenomenally, and it was an amazing experience. It feels like I'm painting it in a slightly negative light, but it was absolutely incredible experience. At the same time, it's probably one of the worst at that point, but it was phenomenal. And yeah, it was just getting my head around the whole situation and the whole sort of competitive nature of it. And of course people were going to be competitive. It was a World Championships. People were there to win. People wanted to win a gold medal for themselves, for their country, for their team. So it was fiercely competitive. I mean, on the second day, I actually shot a lot better on the second day, and sort of pretty much maintained my my position. And we followed the top, I think it was a top men's longbow group around. They were the group in front of us, so we sort of kept catching up to them every now and again. But because the group we was in, we knew we were sort of mid-table, we probably wasn't going to make that cut, so we was all shooting a bit more relaxed. But these guys, nobody was saying a word. They'd take the shot, they'd sit down. It was just, I'd have hated that if I'm honest. I like talking to people, and I like talking about archery with people, and that's what we were doing in our group. But the group ahead, it was silence, and it was such a strange atmosphere. Not one that I've sort of come across before, but yeah, it was weird, and I felt really bad for the longest time because I came back and I was thoroughly dejected. I'd lost all my confidence. I'd lost everything, and my shooting after I sort of came back from France was shocking. I couldn't hit anything. I was in a real mess. And I found myself, I went to a little local tournament with a few friends, and I was in a really, really bad mood. I wasn't shooting fantastic. I felt like throwing my bow in a bush. I didn't, but I felt like it. And I was angry, and I put a miss, and I was really angry, and I've never, ever been like that before. And it made me take a real hard look at myself and like, what are you doing? This isn't you. Why are you being like this? And yeah, it was a really bizarre thing, and it sort of really made me take a good long hard look at myself and why I do the things I do, and why am I doing it? What's the point? sort of big, deep sort of theological thoughts going on. But yeah, it's taken me a long time to sort of pull my head out my arse, actually, and think, do you know what? It doesn't matter. And for the longest time, I was dejected. I thought I failed. I've let myself down. Because I had so many lovely messages, amazingly sort of beautiful messages from people sort of on the run up to and after the World 3Ds. Some absolutely amazing messages, and I felt like I'd let people down. I thought, I've gone there, I've talked it all up, and I felt like I'd failed. I felt like I'd let myself down. I felt like I'd let loads of people down. But do you know what? I hadn't let anyone down. I went to my first World Championships against some of the best traditional archers in the world and finished 36th, 37th, something like that, out of 40, 50 people. And for my first World Championships, that's not actually a bad thing. I got the jitters out the way, and call me a sadist, but I want to go back. I want to go back, and I feel like I've got something to prove, and I feel like I can do so much better. So I am gonna get myself back sorted and get my head straight, and I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna give it another shot. I've got the qualifications coming up sometime this year. I don't know when, but yeah, I'm going to give that another shot. If I make it, I make it. If I don't, it's no big deal. I'll just go back to the woods with the guys and carry on enjoying archery. But I got to say that I was feeling pretty bad in France, and this chap called Chris, who has been a follower of mine for a while, and sort of he contacted me on Facebook, and we've been talking and stuff, and he and his family were sort of in the region holidaying, and they came up to me. They were there because they wanted to see me in the final, the televised final, which technically I made because I coached my friend Millie in the. So technically I made a final, even though I didn't. But they'd come to see me in the final. They were that confident that I was going to do well. But this guy's son, Noah, had made me this sign, and that changed everything. Seeing this kid with this sign saying Grizzly Jim on it, it changed absolutely everything, and it put so many things in perspective. And that was probably one of the most amazing moments of the trip, and that's something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. And so yeah, I'm going back. I'm going to do it again. But yeah, it's going to be a crazy old year of archery. So I've got some really exciting things coming up. I've got a trip to America, which I'm going to tell you all about in another video. Going back to the gathering in May. Going back to Austria. So it's going to be this. I've got so much stuff to tell you about, but I'll save it all for another video. I've rambled on for way too long. But I just wanted to say a huge thank you to my friend Simon from Bode Shop, which is an archery shop in Germany, who sent me some really nice sound recording equipment, which I'm playing with at the moment. So still working out settings and things. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to you, Simon. And he sent me a beautiful arm guard, which you'll see in some other videos. But yeah, I'm sorry if I've just rambled on for far too long. I just wanted to share my thoughts and feelings about my experience at the World 3Ds. So anyway, you take care, shoot straight. I'll see you on the internet. Bye bye.